Call?
Yes. Ingalls?
Here.
Carter?
Here.
Dubravik?
Here.
Isle?
Here.
And Snyder.
Here.
Thank you.
Do I have an approval for the agenda for tonight's meeting? A motion?
I'll motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, public comments, except for the public hearings and work applications. Seeing none. Next, we have new business. We have a construction application for installation of a retaining wall at 423 East Chapin Street by Jeffrey Martin. And I'll turn it over to you, Abby, and to you, Mr. Martin.
All right. So yes, Mr. Martin would like to put a retaining wall at his property. I can get down here to show you some images. His property is non-contributing. His application's there. So as you can see, there was some recent sewer work done on his street. That's why there's all this sand that's kind of there along the front yard of his property. And so he would like to put in a retaining wall to keep that from eroding as part of the hill there. Part of what we have discussed is that he has to stay 2 feet back from the sidewalk and keep a level area with the sidewalk per our ordinance. So you can see from his diagram here, he'll be 2 feet back, keep that level with the sidewalk, and then he can put the wall in on the other side. And this is the design of the wall that he has presented that he would like to put up. He has expressed that this would match in color to the front steps, which you can see are taken off of the porch at this point, but they would all be stained to match. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Mr. Martin, to that?
No, just that picture is just an example off the internet. And that side wall, or that, if you scroll up to the house
Absolutely.
picture, right there, yeah, that side hill that you see that's all sand there, that drops off towards the sidewalk. And so the retaining wall would rise up level with the grass, so we can fill in that space, and so there's a single slope down towards Chapin Street.
All right, open up for discussion. Any questions or comments?
I was wondering what work you were gonna have done over there. I saw the sewer guys out there. Yeah. Was it something that you had to do, or just looking to update the?
No,
from the-
well, I guess that's a little bit debatable.
Yeah.
You know, old houses in town, old sewer lines, and when you first moved in, every 5 or 6 years or so, we have to have it augered out.
Yeah.
Last few years, it's been more and more frequent, like every 6 months or so.
Oh, really?
So insurance said they paid to have that work, so they had to reroute it, because the sewer line actually goes under the house,
Mm-hmm.
out towards the front of the house, and then comes out. So they had to reroute everything.
Oh, okay.
It's a big mess.
Congratulations on getting insurance coverage.
I know, I was like shocked when you said
I
that.
just paying those extra premiums for a long time. Get my money out of it.
Any other comments, questions, anything? Do I have a motion to approve the proposed project at 423 East Chapin Street?
A motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ready
It
for a vote?
passes.
Okay.
Yep.
You're welcome.
All right.
Do I need to get any sort of sign form or anything?
He should get a certificate. There's a certificate that Mike used to do up for,
Okay.
yeah. You can maybe ask Mike what the format was, but he did used to have some sort of document that they could take.
With them.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not sure if he just signed the application and used that. I'll have to ask
No,
him
it was a
what
certificate.
his certificate
Yeah.
is. I have not seen that format. But yes, I will mail you something in the next week
Okay.
with your approval, okay?
Great, and I'm free now to go ahead with contracting the builder to do the wall and the landscaping and stuff.
I don't know anything about the permit process beyond us, so I would defer
He's
to
already-
Abby on
yep.
that.
That part's all set.
Okay, then you're good to go.
Great.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question, not pertaining to this, but just any project, is there a certain time limit after they get that they have to complete it?
Thank you.
I think
Have a
it's,
great night.
I think it's a year
A year? Okay.
That's a
I was just
before you have to
City.
curious.
reapply,
Okay.
Standard.
my recollection.
That's our typical standard for most of our approvals is a year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
All right, next item of business is my project, so I'm going to turn this over to Abby, and I'm obviously going to abstain from voting discussion other than as a homeowner on this
Do you guys
particular
typically
item.
step down to the
Uh,
audience?
If I can. I've sat up here before for all my projects, so
Okay.
I don't know, it's kind of,
Don't worry about it. She's not
You
gonna.
yeah.
usually do.
I'm not going to, like, butt in or anything.
Right. Normally, we just have people step down into the audience and they can ask their questions and do that. But, all right, so yes, the next application is from Michelle Carter and Mike, is it Osh? Is that how
Oaks.
you say it? Oaks, okay. At 311 East Harris, they are planning to remove the old basement windows and frames and repair the damage to the bricks, as you can see in your packets, and they will be replacing them with new windows. And then also replacing one window well, correct, at the rear of the property?
Not replacing, it was removed,
Removed, okay.
and so we're putting it back.
Okay, so you're replacing it in, okay. Putting it back in. All right. This is considered a contributing property. There is a full description of the project there. I'm not gonna read word for word everything, but there are detailed images of everything that will be removed and of the brick that is going to be replaced. None of this requires any zoning or building permit approvals through the city of Cadillac, as long as they all stay the same size. The repair of the brick or the window sizes, if that were to change, would need to go before building review. And do you guys have any other questions or anything else that you would like to say on behalf of your application?
It's set forth in pretty detailed fashion in the packet, so I'll refrain from comment unless somebody has a question.
And these are all on the side or in the backs. I mean, not even seen anyway.
Correct?
Yeah.
You're doing wood instead of vinyl, but for the basement. Nice. Keeping it original, huh?
Yeah.
Nice.
I just, out of curiosity, not that this matters or anything, but is there like a thin steel, like a little thin beam above the top part of the wood and below the brick?
Should be.
I was just curious,
Like a
like my
header?
schoolhouse had that.
I haven't seen one.
Has to be
Not,
one.
you mean visible from the
That'd be a
inside?
Like right
Right on
above
top of
that.
that
Yeah.
sill.
Yeah.
That
So
would
like
be
when
the
you're-
window lintel. Yep.
Yeah, but
That's a common-
you can't really see it.
I
don't
was just
think, can
curious.
you?
It's,
You've seen the window before.
I didn't notice that.
You did?
Yeah, it's not noticeable.
Unless you're
okay,
looking for
it
it,
would
I
be real,
guess.
but it'd be
Yeah.
strong steel. I'm
Right,
sure.
yeah.
Once
Yes.
you're
Interesting.
frame, you'll notice
Keep
it.
from moving or caving
Yeah.
at the
You'll
brick.
probably see it.
Yeah.
Well, it hasn't caved in yet, so.
No, and it looks pretty good. Okay, I was just curious. I like the way things are constructed, so,
Built to last.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Who's doing the work?
It is going to be a combination of Mike and, I can't remember, Frank Baby, I think his name is, the same person who did our garage roof.
Okay. And he's doing the brick as well as the windows?
He's doing, we salvaged some of the good brick from the back of the house. And so we're going to be replacing damaged brick with that original brick from the back of the house.
Yeah. That's nice. Okay.
So this is just a fun fact on a side note. Our director of finance used to live in this house. So he
No
was
way.
telling me all about how they used to grow up playing and connecting with all the neighborhood kids, and so yes.
Fun.
What's,
He was very
what's the
excited
last
to see
name
that.
again?
Owen Roberts?
Roberts.
Mhm.
What years was he there?
I don't know. He said he was pretty young.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a cool house.
He said it was a very cool house. There's a fun like stairwell in
Right,
the
yeah.
back, and
Uh-huh.
yes.
Yeah.
So I got a full description of your home, even though I've never been there.
It's changed a lot.
You might not recognize it.
Yeah.
Okay, my only other issue is the vent pipe. Is there any way it could go out somewhere else? Or, I mean, it would look better, of course, not having, but you have to have a vent.
Right.
Vent.
Yeah, so the only way it could go someplace, well, the only place that it would make sense would have been the back of the house, and that's, has that, room addition on the back of it. It can't go out the back anymore. So I think it would be almost infeasible we would have to cut through the
Yeah,
brick.
you'd be cutting through the hole.
And I think that would be more problematic than bringing it through the window frame.
Is any brick being rebuilt along here? Probably not necessarily enough to accommodate it.
Not
if there was a
enough
place
not enough to accommodate it, I don't think. It just, and I would be more concerned about the structural integrity going in because this is the brick facade, but behind that is the structural brick. So I'd be concerned about.
A couple layers, Tony.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. And I'd just be concerned about the structure. At least with this, we already know that it's not causing any issues with the structure. Even though it's not aesthetically attractive,
Well,
it's
it's
not.
also back behind. You don't
Right.
see it from the
Yeah.
side of the property. Those are my questions.
Okay. No other questions? Then I guess, who's the vice chair, or I can ask for a vote? Or a
Do we have
motion.
a motion? Yeah,
You go
okay,
ahead.
I'll motion to pass.
To approve this?
To approve, there we go.
Okay. I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect.
Good.
All right.
And just to be clear, do we need, if we're leaving everything in terms of the window sizes the way that it is now, other than, okay, so I do have a question. So below, you see that vent pipe. So there's going to be wood that's basically going to trick around that, and then the window's going to set in there. Is that going to require a permit?
Sure.
I will probably have you ask the building inspector instead of me. So typically our standard is, as long as you're not changing the size of any doors or windows, it's just considered regular maintenance, and you don't need to get a permit for that.
Right.
My only question was, like you said, if there are any metal headers in there that you're removing with the brick work, then that might get
not
into a
be.
structural. But I don't believe, no, you should not need one if you're just replacing existing with the same size.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because it's just basically the window frame around the,
Yes.
the
Right.
frame of the window.
It's going to trick around the,
Yeah.
Okay.
trick the eye.
Yes, then no, that would not need any permits.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I can take over again. And I did inadvertently leave out the approval of the meeting minutes, but we can do that after we finish the new business. The next item is construction application for removal and replacement of windows on upper part of home by John Eel at 403 East Cass Street. And I'll turn it over to Abby and John on this.
Okay.
Let's bring up the pictures and I'll show you what's.
Yes. So there were a couple pictures added today that were not in your packet. I apologize. I've been having a little bit of technical issues. I'm getting every other email from John for some reason. So
So it's gonna be these three windows here, these three, and then if you scroll down a little bit, this one right here.
Wait, okay, so it's not the turret windows?
Nope, it's these windows. So we're having a baby, so we're redoing the baby room. So it's
Okay.
like, this is the baby's room.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna be those three windows and then this window.
And that's, okay, in relation to that, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Exactly, so just one bedroom right now that we're doing. And so the outside sill, horn, apron, and stool will all remain the same. So basically, they're just pop the inside ones out and then replacing with a double hung replacement window. But we're going from wood to vinyl.
that about sums it up. This is a contributing site, as you guys all know. And those images are
I'm
there.
sorry, I'm just gonna open it up for questions and discussion. If, that's it? Okay.
So
So have you not looked at wood windows, wood replacement windows?
I have,
Because there
but-
are wood replacement windows.
Yeah, I know
That you
there
can make any size,
Yeah.
you know?
I don't want to go that route. Yeah, One, due to cost, and two, due to longevity. That, and on the outside, you can't tell that they're wood. On the inside, it's the only place they can tell that it's wood.
Mhm.
So,
Would you do a wood cladding inside, interiorly?
you're saying on the window itself?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could if you wanted to.
A lot of them are like aluminum on the outside, wood on the inside.
Oh,
you know what I
I've
mean?
never seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
you have
that's-
those
Yeah,
inserts.
that's what I was gonna suggest, and I did research because I wanted to, just be able to address, the use of alternative materials, and it is allowed. I mean, we can consider,
Mhm.
we can consider the economic feasibility. The first preference is repair, obviously. Are they beyond repairs?
Well, they're single plane. I want to go with double.
Okay.
And even with screens, we still be able to
Right.
breeze through it. So, or even with storms.
Right. I also did some research on what other historic districts do in this circumstance, and much to my surprise. Some of the smaller historic districts, and it's on a case-by-case basis, and it's different historic districts do different things. Some say absolutely not, never vinyl. Some consider vinyl if it's matches the features of the original window. The primary objection to vinyl, and this is my concern, is that it doesn't, it's the texture of it. It's shiny, and
Looks like plastic,
it's,
'cause it is.
yeah, it doesn't look like the rest of the windows. So this is what we did in our turret windows. And I don't know if you've looked at this, but it'll last longer. I also did research on the vinyl windows, and they say
Okay.
that they don't last as long as the wood with the aluminum cladding, which
Okay.
is what we did in our turret. But they'll outlast vinyl. They're wood on the inside, so they're not vinyl on the inside.
Okay.
And they even last longer than wood. So they outlast wood, they outlast vinyl, and they look more like wood. They don't have that shiny texture.
Okay.
So
But I would also like to point out that my house has been approved for vinyl windows in the past. I have about
Oh, it
10
has?
I
You do
10
have 'em?
About 10
Okay.
vinyl windows. in the
Oh,
house.
okay.
So
All
they're
right.
all on the opposite side on Doug's house.
Uh-huh.
And the
Okay.
kitchen are all vinyls and the bathrooms are all vinyls.
All right, well, that changes things then.
Yeah. So, and that was approved
All right.
back about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Or no, it would have been longer than that, about 15 years ago with the previous board. You were on the board back then.
Mhm.
Would have been with
Yeah.
Wendy Moore and Doug and
No, I
Jill
wasn't
Brown.
on with Wendy and Doug and Jill.
Okay.
I was after them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was I? Think.
I don't know.
I think
But
we're
that was
both-
before I
It was
even
early
purchased the
on.
house.
Yeah, that was like
So-
probably the very first
Yeah.
board
Oh, and
they
Wendy
had.
had it.
Yeah.
When Wendy, yeah.
Oh, I wasn't, okay, I
Yeah.
probably
So
was there.
they replaced a
Mhm.
bunch of windows, so
Yeah.
the only windows that are still wood in the house are still all the original ones. Yeah.
Was it a matter of not being able to find a adequate quote for the wood, or
No,
like
I just
compare
have
to-
a lot of experience replacing vinyl windows, so this is a job I'd be doing myself. I do it all the time in my rentals, and they always turn out really good. But
Well, one thing I'd point out is that's clearly not the original window opening anyway. I'm just saying, if it were it's already there, so it's not like we can force you backwards to going, I don't feel like.
Right.
That's fair to say, oh, cut a bigger hole and redo the architectural, because they changed the architectural feature of that window. That would have been a double layer, those would have both been double hungs, they would have been the tall windows on top, the tall windows on below. So if you cut a hole in the wall and did the tall double hungs, which would have originally been there, of course, it would be far more aesthetically balanced and pleasing. They did that chopped up stuff with the horizontal windows. That is completely not
Yeah.
historically accurate to that house. So that's where it's like, hey, if I were doing it, that's what I would be wanting to do, is get it closer to what it was. If I've already got a botched window frame opening that's clearly not in balance with the structure and the style of what it originally was. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So,
I never even
yeah.
thought about that. Because the
Yeah.
inside it's bird's eye maple frames, which the entire room is
Mhm.
bird's eye maple.
hmm
So that's why I thought they were original, but I guess they could not replaced.
there's no way those are
Yeah.
original. I mean, yeah, we've all sorts of new wood in our house that
Yeah.
looks,
Mhm.
that no one can tell
matches,
is
yeah.
not original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even though it may be high quality, it doesn't mean it was original. So, I mean, that's kind of a preference thing, but that would bring back your, the long, tall windows in your rounded either turrets or bay windows. Like the one below that's the tall double hungs, it would have been exactly the same up above. You never saw them closed in like that. That was one of the hodgepodge things they did when they chopped that place up and had it all vinyl clad and,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So, just a thought, you know, because it's like the hole's already there. It's not like, I don't think we can say you have to put it back to what the original window was
Right.
when it's already structurally sealed up and all that. That's probably a choice thing, I would imagine, or that's how I would think of it as a board member here. But
Optional.
it's, yeah, an optional, but definitely it would improve the aesthetic if you chose to go that route. It would give more balance to the house, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I have a question. Are you gonna do the system where you put the side like rails in for the windows, so you don't have to take the whole window out, the frame?
Right, exactly. So
Okay,
the
that's so
frame is
much
all gonna be
easier.
there.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
cool.
just popping the window out,
Okay.
putting a new one in.
Okay.
It's like 4 screws, silicone.
Yeah, it's, yeah,
And then that's pretty much it.
no, okay.
Yeah.
I
I could do all those in like a half a day probably.
And we also use some of the wood aluminum clad windows. Unfortunately, some of the seals broke after 25 years, but they are nice with the wood and the aluminum on the outside. And we did
I
the
guess I
same
never
thing with
noticed. I never looked
with
at
the
it.
rails, you know, just,
Aluminum.
we didn't have to replace the whole window.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know, could check into.
Yeah,
You
they
say they're
do-
bird's eye maple now?
Yeah.
The frames?
Yeah,
of
on the
window?
inside, yeah, but they're
So
all rotted.
But they're probably original.
Well, that's what I thought. Yeah. Like the sill and everything is, but even like the wood on the inside.
Holding the glass?
It looks maple to me, yeah. That's what
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
I'd bet it wasn't, but that's just me. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that's like really old, but it's still not original,
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
know?
that's
They
true. Yeah.
kinda,
Yeah.
they like us, we're doing things progressively, yeah. So,
Yeah, they could have been replaced in the 50s even.
yeah.
And that's old, and they were
Yeah,
old then.
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
eventually I'd like to get more windows replaced, but it's just so expensive to get.
Mhm. It's a
Yeah,
process.
like even these ones over here, this one is vinyl, and then like the one on the opposite side's vinyl too, and then these ones are like just really bad replacement windows that they probably put in 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I think those they feel plastic. I'm not sure if they are or just really crappy wood that's been plasterized or bonded so many times.
Right.
But who knows?
It's too bad they didn't save some of those windows, the one they tore down by Peterson's
Right. Exactly.
with the rounded,
Yep.
you know, I mean, those would be worth saving, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
With the rounded frame
Glass
and
and
glass,
glass.
the glass already rounded and the old glass, that would have been neat to, because that's probably what was there originally, you know, and now you have your 20-year-old whatever's put in there, in the
Yeah.
turret itself, you know?
Yep.
They might have been that curved glass.
Well, the fact that you already have vinyl
That's
windows in the
vinyl.
house, I think is
And their second story is gonna be hard to
dispositive,
see.
yeah.
Yeah, nobody's
And,
gonna notice it.
and vinyl does get they probably have a matte finish on, I mean, an option.
Can you get
I
that?
guess so. I
So it wouldn't be
never-
shiny?
I never even looked into
It's
that.
just the shininess is the only, but,
Yeah.
but again, if you already have vinyl windows in the house, it's almost a moot point, so. you
Yeah.
know.
Well, and they're not the original, I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah,
speaking
right.
as if I know. I'm pretty sure. They're not the original shape of the window anyway, you know, so it kind of opens, it's like a non-contributing aspect to a contributing house, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
So,
I just feel like if
even that.
I've done the same research and the wood windows are just so much better, like they last so much longer. And if you haven't got a quote or found somebody, I don't know, I just feel like I would urge you to look at that option. And you might be surprised if it's, you know, well, maybe
Yeah.
it's not as much as I thought it was, and then I can go with something a little more,
Yeah.
you know.
I think they're more expensive, I think, than the vinyl, but they outlast them.
Yeah.
And they flex and, yeah.
Should look into
And you
that.
could still lift them up and clean them and.
Pop 'em out.
Yeah, like
those-
the Anderson
They're-
windows.
yeah, ours are heavy.
We
I
can.
think Anderson and what's the other big company?
Marvin windows?
Jeld-Wen.
Jeld-Wen,
Or,
Marvin.
That make wood.
Marvin has a historical series as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I think most of those companies do that with just the inserts, like you just replace, you know, you
Okay.
can cut the old
Like-
iron, yeah,
Yeah.
the weights, and then you just put
Oh,
those
I see what
inserts,
you're
that's what we did,
Yeah. Yeah.
before the district was here, but the windows look good.
All right, but if you want to do vinyl, if you already have vinyl, I'm just not.
I haven't
seeing
purchased
an
them yet,
objection, Yeah. But just take a look at the aluminum.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
because
or
they're
wood.
be wood on the inside. They just look better.
Yeah.
On the inside, they look better too.
Okay.
A lot better.
Yeah, and I'll look at my other windows. I just assumed that they were all vinyl. Maybe they are just like aluminum.
The aluminum clad.
Yeah, they could be.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that they're vinyl in the bathrooms
Right.
and in my kitchen.
And you probably have a time, like, constraint that you'd like to get this.
Yeah, well, baby's coming in December, so before
Okay.
that.
Baby winter.
If you were
We need a warm
okay.
baby.
Okay, yeah.
I think
yeah.
winter's the bigger time constraint.
Yeah,
Exactly. So,
we-
next couple
hopefully,
months.
maybe we could push it back. Okay.
All right, any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve John Eel's application as stated for the replacement of the windows as stated in the application? And then with the proviso that if John decides to do wood or aluminum clad, then
Perfect.
that's
That'd be
fine.
preferred, yeah. Yeah.
Do I have a motion? Motion? Hello, anybody? Motion? Somebody? Motion? I need a motion.
Okay, and that was and still considering
say
the
I-
wood with the aluminum maybe? Is that
Yes,
how we
he's
left
still,
it?
yeah, so
So we're
he's,
leaving it
well,
wide
no,
open.
no, no, so we're approving he can do the vinyl,
Okay,
but we encourage to look at either the wood or the aluminum clad. If,
and also see if they have a matte vinyl or something.
right,
Sure.
yes.
Or maybe
And I would
just take some
encourage looking
fine
at the
steel wool.
architectural
And rough it up.
You rough it
layout,
up, yeah.
you know? If that's something possible for change.
What'd you say? Sorry.
I said I would also encourage looking at the architectural, if there are any old pictures, like 100-year-old pictures, not 50, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of the home.
He'd have to come back then, I think, if he's gonna
That one
change
I
the
might
window
Change the
opening,
window
yeah.
opening, yeah.
For this,
Or we could
for
give
this
a
partic-
caveat that if he wanted to make the window back to original size, he could,
right, yeah,
but he wouldn't have to come back. As long as it was the same brand that we've already seen and all that.
right.
That seems-
It's not like any trim is left. They chopped out, every
Hell.
time they vinyl windows, they chop off your trim.
Okay, that's a long motion.
Yeah, this is pretty wide open. This is
Oh, yeah.
really wide open.
That's more like still discussion,
Why don't we
sorry.
just-
And Pella was the name I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Pella. I couldn't
Hella,
think of
that's
it.
right,
Yeah,
Hella,
And
yes.
it's like those nice inserts.
They
as
do
well.
have
Mhm.
those are nice
So
windows.
this is the oldest picture of the house that I have, but it looks like it's still the same windows.
Is that from the museum? that you
No,
found?
it's just like one that was taken probably 30 years ago or something.
Yeah, but you
Oh.
see how that wood below, that was what used to be window.
Oh.
That gray wood, same down
okay.
here. The windows were bigger. They just used cheapo replacement windows.
That makes
And
sense.
then you paint it over time, and then it looks like it's, oops, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I just want to look. Okay.
How old is that photo, do you think?
I think 30.
Did you see it, Will? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When
Oh,
that-
30 years isn't, yeah.
Yeah, it's not
that's
gonna show up, but that's the
What-
oldest one I have.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I just see it
Yeah.
quickly? Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
But then those windows would be really close to the floor too. I
They
mean,
would.
Yeah.
those
They
be
would.
like
I would agree
4
with
inches.
Gwen that those.
By
probably
code,
would
they
look
would have them be like, tempered glass anyway, you know what I mean?
Right.
As far as safety with children and whatnot, and
My
safety locks
children
and
love
all
those
that.
low windows.
I
They
know.
stand
They're
on
the
them and
best.
wave to the neighbors.
Yeah.
Because they're the,
Our dog loves them.
Both with our windows are like this close to the ground, and they've always stood on them. Said hi.
Okay, now who made a motion?
So we
Well,
could-
we're gonna have to
what we
redo
could
this,
do
I
is we
think.
could just
It's
say
gotten a
that
little lost.
instead of vinyl, just go with either aluminum clad or wood.
Right.
And then we'll just skip the vinyl part, and then if I decide I really want to go vinyl, I'll come back. So
Okay,
All
I
right.
would feel more comfortable.
So let
we do
me-
a little more homework.
Let me
Yeah,
restate
yeah,
what
but
the
but I-
motion is
if I
going to be.
approve
Do
the
I have a
wood or
motion?
Aluminum clad, that's.
That, I would approve that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve John's application for replacement of the second level windows, 4 of them? If John chooses to do the vinyl, it's fine.
No, I'll come back.
Wood or
for vinyl.
aluminum.
You'll come back for
But
vinyl?
For vinyl, yep, let's just get approved for
Wood or aluminum.
wood or aluminum.
Okay, great. All right. He's going to do the wood or the aluminum windows, 4 windows on the second floor. Do I have a motion
I'll
to,
make a motion.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, I'd like to make another motion though that he can expand the size of the windows.
We need, I
chooses-
think he's gonna have to get a permit to do that.
Yeah, I
So
don't
he
think
has
he'll
to
be
come
doing that.
back. He has to come back because
But would
he would
come
have to
back
get
here?
a,
Would
yeah,
he
he would
come
have to
back
get a
here?
permit and they won't issue him the permit till he comes here, so.
Oh, there you go, okay.
It'd be a lot of work.
That would be
Yeah.
a lot of work, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe for the John.
All right, now that that's over, I'll go back and get an approval of the meeting minutes from July 10th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Oh, wait, where? Oh, I know what I was gonna say. The only thing that are different about the meeting minutes is they don't have who is absent, and usually Mike had that, just, you wanna
Okay.
make a note of that.
I can add that.
Okay, cool.
Who was absent?
John.
John.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can make a new motion to approve with that change.
Yeah, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes with the change to indicate that John was not present at the meeting?
What? I do, just because that's how we always did it in
That's
the
fine.
past. Yeah.
I can definitely do that.
I'll second.
So, okay, I made the motion
Mhm.
that we should include, because there are
Yes.
times when I won't make it. I
Okay.
haven't made it, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
Thank you.
With the correction.
Yes.
And then we have old business. There is none. We want to do the short-term rental discussion. And this, we're going to loop somebody in on this, is that?
Yeah, so we do have our legal team. Laura Jenifich is here to assist with any questions that you guys may have. As you may be aware, there's a lot of meetings and there's this public survey right now about short-term rentals and what that's going to look like in the city of Cadillac. And so John asked to be added to your agenda tonight so he could come and present to you guys some feedback, comments, things that we're having, suggestions, and locations, and we wanted to get your guys' input on that before we take anything further with making it official. So, John, if you wanted to.
At our last public forum, we carried out an exercise where people had push pins and they could put pins in the map where they wanted short-term rental and where they didn't want short-term rental. And one of the few places that they were placing the pins that they wanted to see short-term rental was in an area east of the downtown, which sort of heads in towards the historic district. And as we consider that, I wanted to find out what your, thoughts were on having short-term rentals in the historic district. So far in our online survey, we've had 419 responses from the people in the community. It's not just Cadillac residents, it's people in the Cadillac area. But when we ask which of the following housing types, where would you like to see short-term rental, almost 60% said in single-family homes. And likewise, when we ask what districts you'd like to see short-term rental, we had, what was it, about
Yeah, about 46%.
46% said single-family districts, meaning zoning districts. So, but we've also had people at the actual forum who the majority was anti, so we're really trying to figure it out. And that's one reason why we did this more substantial survey, is so we could really try to drive up the number of people who were participating in how we should deal with short-term rental. So given that there's some sentiment where it should be done, and it might include single-family, and the areas that they used on the map at the first forum was going east of downtown, I thought, well, let's find out what the feelings are in the historic district, especially since some of those homes would be larger and nicer and quite frankly would lend themselves to being a short-term rental property. So with that, I just wanted to have some general discussion and see what your thoughts were about that as we continue to think about where we might allocate the proper areas for short-term rentals. We do have another short-term rental meeting coming up, and we plan to go over the survey results and probably present at least two alternatives in terms of where they might be. But as we get ready for that meeting, we're just trying to get as much final input on the subject as we can.
We have shut down at least one illegal operating in the historic district, possibly more than that when Mike was here. So,
What is your definition of short-term rental? Are you meaning like Airbnb?
yes.
Or are you meaning someone renting and they rent only 1 year? Is that short-term? What do you mean by short-term rental?
Less-
Less
than
than 30 days.
Okay.
Airbnb type thing?
Okay.
So I have, my comment is, I have a couple, but the first is that I think that the historic district kind of tends to be the dumping ground for what everybody else doesn't want. That said, I would like to have more information about it. My instinct is, probably to everybody's surprise, is that they might not necessarily be a bad thing in the historic district, with some important caveats. And one, of course, is parking, which, as you know, we already have a significant problem with people parking on their lawns, on the tree lawns, wherever they want. So I would think that any type of zoning change to allow short-term rentals in the historic district would have to be accompanied by some changes in enforcement regarding parking and some parking plan, because we just can't have it worse than it already is. It's terrible.
That also came out of the survey, almost across the board. People said that we have to have tight regulations on how it's done, meaning everything from parking to noise to you name it. Just a lot of different regulations would be in place.
Right. And the reason that I don't necessarily see Airbnbs as a bad thing is my experience staying in them. And my experience staying in the Airbnbs is that the nicer they are, the more people want to stay there. That isn't always the case, though. Sometimes people just want someplace cheap and they don't care if it's,
That is true.
And so it's just, it would have to be significantly regulated. It could have a positive effect on the historic district if it was well regulated, but I haven't seen the attention to I haven't seen the attention paid to the historic district in terms of simple issues such as blight, parking, all of these things that we've been expressing our concerns about. I mean, obviously, this is going to be a much more attractive place for Airbnb if it doesn't look like a trailer park in Kansas, and it does. Because of
Parts of it.
yes, not the whole thing. You know what I'm saying.
yeah.
You can drive through there, and it's hodgepodge. You can have a wonderfully maintained house right next to just a junkyard. I mean, there's a house. I walked past a house the other day where the entire porch is caving in. I can't even remember where it was.
Probably on Cass Street.
Yeah.
There's one there.
At least one. Yeah,
Chapin.
yeah. There's
Yeah,
two. I think there's two.
One on Chapin, one on Cass.
So we have this terrible blight issue, and I would want to tie any type of zoning change into addressing that particular issue with enforcement.
In considering short-term rental, do you think, in addition to maybe perhaps allowing it, that there ought to be a cap, either in numbers or percentage of the homes in the district, if it were allowed?
I think it's got to depend on the facility itself. I mean, there are some places that won't lend themselves to Airbnb just because of the parking. I think there's got to be requirements that make it feasible for a particular property, that they have to meet requirements. I don't, you guys talk on it.
I would be very concerned simply because, like Michelle said, there's been no enforcement to blight, and I would be very concerned that if you allowed Airbnbs,
Be worse.
that it would just be worse because there's already no enforcement. Like, if you have extra rules, that's fine, but if there's no enforcement or follow-up, and my other thought was, people, if they're doing the Airbnb, it's always, you're not going to take care of that house as well as you would the one you live in. And so if it's in the historic district, who's to say that they're not just going to let it go hodgepodgey and take care of it a little bit less? That's my initial feeling.
That's some of the problems with the rentals.
Yeah.
These people come in, they buy these homes, they don't do anything. They don't even mow their lawns.
Right.
The sidewalks are
Oh.
cracking.
And unfortunately,
The short-term rental, generally they're maintained better than long-term rental housing.
True. That's
Because-
generally that's true. I would
Because,
say.
because the person that operates it and the tenants are both getting rated online. And if you don't have a better quality of maintenance, then you get a poor rating, and then all of a sudden your rentals drop. And so that's been the experience that I mostly read about in the industry.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I
The
would-
ones
I
I've
would
seen have
also.
been really nice. Of course, we don't stay in the bad ones.
Right.
So-
But from like an insurance standpoint, like the insurance company wants you to maintain the house you live in for liability, and so their standards are very high, and they want you to maintain your sidewalk and make sure it's not cracked or uneven. And I think that the allowance for rentals is a little bit lower, and I think you can get away with a lot more. I don't know.
It's
I
a
see both
different,
sides, yeah.
yeah, it's a different type of pressure to keep your property up.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I used to have an Airbnb out of my house, and it was immaculate all the time. And that was when I maintained it the most because, yeah, you're getting reviewed every single day.
Is it the residence you live in now?
Yep. So I
Oh,
ran
so you were resident occupied doing an Airbnb. That's kind
Sure.
of like a B&B period,
A lot of,
right?
a lot of
Airbnb,
people do
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But-
Versus the one that was at the bottom of Pine Street that I know at least there was one instance there where it was extremely loud. The neighbors were extremely distraught and upset. Nothing was, trash and again, that is a nice place. And it had to have been a very expensive price for those that were renting it. But when you have a wedding or college-age kids coming on vacation and they're all pooling their money, all of a sudden they that don't care can now afford a really nice, expensive place for them to trash. And even if they have some guidelines like condos do, that you clean it up before you leave. Well, while they're there, if they're partying, again, the noise pollution and things like that, at least sometimes the bigger the crowd. So I don't know if there's a difference possibly in ones where someone's renting one room, you know what I mean, to be like a quickie, fun weekend away, which is more of a B&B scenario, a regular B&B scenario, but they're, a smaller situation versus a huge sprawling property where you're going to have, maybe you're renting 10 people and maybe 15 or 20 show up or whatever, I'm not sure that one is, even though it comes with a price tag, clearly, or no one would rent it, but
Yeah.
plenty of kids
Well,
with
the
parents
unfortunate-
footing the bill,
Yeah.
let stuff get trashed.
The
So-
unfortunate thing in Cadillac is people are reacting to short-term rentals that never went through any kind of review process without any ordinance regulation. So we would have the absolute worst outcomes if you're looking at what's happening now because there was no system in place to review them under. Should we adopt regulations, then everything going forward would have to go through that process. And so, it would definitely be different. I'm not saying there wouldn't be ever any issues, but it would definitely be an improvement over what we're seeing now because there was never any management regulations in place in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, there'd have to be some sort of liaison too, I would think, just to keep, it's gotta, again, I go back to my caveat, just the whole enforcement issue is really bad in our area. We're like the redheaded stepchild of Cadillac. Seriously, I look at all this money being spent
Yeah.
everywhere else, $4 million for the management of water, the whatever. Cadillac West, all the money being spent over there, and meantime, we've got, old rain-sodden lazy boys out by the trash can in front of the car with the bungee cords holding the door on, parked on the tree lawn. And there's just, so you look at that and it's, if there's not even enough concern about that, then where's the concern going? Are you going to be concerned when there's loud parties, when there's parking fiascos, when there's upkeep issues? I just don't want to be left behind even further than we already are.
Yes, would there be enough money to oversee that new management? If you
Right.
say, well, we're going to put this in place to
Will
manage
the system
it.
pay for itself?
Will the system pay for itself, or will there be nothing to?
Yeah, and depending on where we go, we don't know whether there would be a revenue source off of it. There could very well be a revenue source that maybe could be fed into enforcement. I don't know that. To some degree, that will have to be a council decision, I think, in terms of how the money flows to manage that. One thing that would automatically happen is that all those units would be undergoing inspection just like the rental houses would be. So where you have single family that are homeowners, they don't get their houses inspected. With these houses, they would actually be inspected for basic property maintenance standards.
I believe yearly. And
y-
currently rentals are 3 years, and our proposal was every year for Airbnb, so they would get more inspections.
And who would, would the regulations be modeled on, for instance, regulations that are in place in another city that we could look at? How would that be handled?
Yes, we have, in the new zoning ordinance, we have a set of management requirements that are already in place, and we could certainly make those available to you, and they could certainly be adjusted. We surveyed, probably at least 10 different communities that had solid programs on short-term rental, and we evaluated everything that they were doing, and then we extracted from what they were doing and customized it for Cadillac. But we certainly could make available what's on the being proposed now, and we would certainly be open to change that or add to it or subtract to it, whatever we needed to do to make it more acceptable. The main thing is if it could be operated right, is trying to figure out the appropriate places where they could be, I guess, is what we're really trying to get after right now.
Right.
Well, I'm not sure that the historic district is the appropriate place when you, I think it all comes back to the current ability to adhere to the standards we have in place already. If we already have lawns that aren't mown, if we already have cracked sidewalks, if we already have homes now, many in town, that need paint jobs that you can't, whether it's people doing themselves or hiring painters, you got basic maintenance issues that aren't going on, and that's before you get the noise, then the driving and parking on the tree lawns and, stuff like this. So, and caved in porches. I mean, yeah, I know it's the structure of their home, they own their home, but that's blight. That's not even safe. So in maybe not the whole home it would be condemnable, but maybe that particular porch situation is not safe. And how do you mandate someone spend money that they don't have on their own home, etc.? But nonetheless, if we can't have a consistently nice neighborhood throughout, not just the boundary of the historic district, but our historic resources are broadly beyond the historic district. So whether it's the downtown businesses that won't paint the back side of their building or whatever, if we can't get people to do the basics, then no, we don't need to add another layer of trouble that would require babysitting/management situations to come in. Maybe the only exception would be owner-occupied, one-room Airbnb or something like that, where that person is in attendance at the home while some stranger's in their house,
My only comment is that, just sort of based on what I said, is that there is an incentive to make your property nice
Exactly.
when you have an Airbnb. There's a strong incentive because you're not going to no one's going to rent it, and you're going to be throwing money at a mortgage that is not going to be offset by any income. So it could have the potential of making the area better
I think
if it's done right. If it's done right. And to be honest with you, I think that it would be difficult for people to rent their Airbnbs, no matter how nice their house is, when you've got
the
blight next door. So I mean,
that's the problem. If we don't fix up the neighborhood, it's not worthwhile for being Airbnb.
I mean, that's not factoring into a yes or no from whether we think it's a good or bad idea. What we're saying is that that's just for you guys to consider, that maybe this could benefit us in terms of the city paying more attention to making this a nicer area, so that particular venture does better.
If we
We
did
could
go
even
in the-
discuss the option of, there are quite a few current rentals that are there, so if those were either purchased or sold to become Airbnbs, and maybe they'd invest more money than the current,
Absolutely.
it could be a positive
I agree with
change.
that. I do agree with
But
that.
there are enforcement issues that
Right.
I'm not going to say are all worked out yet in the proposed ordinance.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm all for Airbnbs. I'll never have one out of my own personal house ever again, but I think people should have the rights to do what they want with their own property, and I think it does improve the property. I think that people that don't stay in Airbnbs and don't understand the process, it's hard to look objectively at it, but I think it does improve the quality of the neighborhoods when Airbnbs are allowed I've had Airbnbs in Traverse City, Kingsley, that I've ran myself, that I know that I've sold off now, but those have done great. I've taken old, like basically abandoned buildings, renovated them, made them really nice, improved the neighborhood, and so I think that was what would happen in our area too. And it would make home values increase, and I just don't think that the houses that are ran down right now, those are never gonna be Airbnbs. Nobody's ever gonna stay in them. Even if you rent them
That's
out for
true.
$50
Mhm.
a day.
Right.
But you got, grandparents, and, elderly people that can barely afford living in their houses right now. And if they can take a couple weekends off, rent out their house and use that money to, help pay their mortgage and then help renovate their house, I'm all for it. Because I mean, that's an aspect of that we really need to consider, because we live in a town with a lot of poverty, and a lot of people need money to renovate their houses, and they can't do it if they don't have the money, and then you get that negative feedback cycle, then it goes into blight.
I agree with you.
I just don't know if I would necessarily. I mean, I agree that everything you said about it would bring more money into the neighborhood if that was what was happening. The trickle effect. But I think there's a lot of people that I know that wouldn't like strangers in and out, regularly next to them. They moved to a district where they, want single families next to them. They don't want strangers coming and going, a lot, would be one concern. And I think, I don't know, I think
But we don't
we
get to
would,
pick our
would,
neighbors,
Hmm?
We don't get to choose our neighbors, and probably
Buy your
65%
house
of the
with
houses around us are rentals.
that's what that was my other question, is like, would we limit it to a percentage in the historic district? Would we say only,
You
I
could.
don't know, 10% of the houses in the historic district could be turned into a rental, so first come, first serve, if it was something like that.
That's a very common thing to be done. And there's other strategies, but that's a very common one.
Yes.
Once
Traverse
again, we
City,
go back to all of the wonderful economic positives and the freedom of like, why should someone be telling you what to do on your own property? But like our commission is a little bit contrary to that too. Why should anyone be telling you whether it's a vinyl window, a wood window, a slate tile, a cedar tile, or an asphalt tile on your roof, But it's that balance, I guess, because it's back to, John's already said, the nightmare Airbnb situations we've had in town, which means there are some, not yours, but others. It has happened because there aren't regulations and a whole nother layer of bureaucracy. Wait a minute, we don't regulate the own bureaucracy that we already have, is not done well. So when that's done well, then I say we expand further, because there would be now an extra set of ordinances, and it might generate a little bit of money with, like if there's a permit or a fee with each rental or something like this, But what about regulating the rentals, the 60 whatever percent rentals we already have, either decreasing the percentage of rentals allowed, or I'm not sure what way to creatively help people
Well, I mean-
motivate and move forward in that. But to help the city, because I know they're short on funds too, and implementation, but nonetheless, stuff's not being implemented. And even if we wanted to do the Airbnbs, how do we, from the administrative side of what the city can do to help the population, what are we doing with all the blight issues, the basic stuff that does not take $1 million to do, like a can of paint, a lawnmower, taking out your trash, picking up your lawn, that kind of stuff would make a big difference in even making an Airbnb appealing. Without those basics, nobody wants to go there anyway. You think, oh, cute, quaint, historic district. That's probably why the votes were so highly in that area, because when people go for the weekend experience, they want something different than maybe what they normally live in. And that old historic character of the homes and everything is very appealing to people who are going on a quickie weekend vacation, or even a week long or two. So that, in that way, I could see our district being very appealing just because it's a historic district. But then you get into those different layers of things. So it seems to me our resources in town perhaps are better used still focusing in on what we need to do to make it livable just with the neighbors we already have.
Or a quid
Yeah.
pro quo.
That's kind of what my first thought was yeah, pretty much.
I believe there's legislation that's in place that's supposed to be voted on next year, right? About how cities can't deny Airbnbs pretty soon.
Laura can probably speak to how many proposals
Yeah.
have been before the state. There's been a lot.
There's been legislation pending, but it's sort of died on the vine, at least as of now. That could change, but as of now, we have a number of communities still proceeding through adopting regulations because there's no guarantee of if or when the legislature will ever decide to divest local communities of control over this.
We did wait for a while, but I mean, I think it's been 2 or 3 years that it's
Yeah.
been before the state, and they haven't
Yeah,
approved anything.
it is not moving anywhere.
We're not gonna wait any longer. We're gonna
Interesting.
One of the things
create
that
something.
One of the things that's in the proposal is that every unit would have to have a managing agent, whether that be the owner or somebody the owner hired, and that person would have to have a proximity to the unit, within an hour, hour's drive, and someone that if there were an issue, the police could contact day or night to address any issues at the unit. So there's a number of things that we're trying to put into place. The other thing too is it would probably be permitted more than likely through special use permit, which would just give the planning commission an ability to look that much closer at whether there's parking, available parking, or enough room to handle what they're proposing to do. And so it wouldn't be a automatic permitted by right use.
And as the HDC, it could potentially have to come before you as well before it's allowed.
Yeah.
But I don't think we need to vote on anything
No.
tonight. We don't need like a proposal or a recommendation from you guys. We just wanted to get your feedback, and I think it's pretty consistent with what we've been hearing of, questions on how it's going to be enforced.
So currently it's B1 and B2 that's allowed short-term rentals, right?
Correct.
Okay, what about B3? Is that going to be a part of the new?
Well,
Seems like
primarily, we are changing the names of the districts, but right now, primarily, the areas that are proposed are the Mitchell Street corridor and the West Side Business District are the majority of the areas that we are planning to do it in. The question is, do we expand it into any other areas other than that? And that's what we're trying to get at, and that's why all the survey data to see what people's thoughts are about it.
This is the current proposed map in those districts. So everywhere there's color is where it would be proposed to be allowed. Green, pink, orange, and purple. Or pink, red, and
interesting
purple.
that you get this one spot right here that the guy that owns the Pines owns. I'm like, he must have some pretty heavy weight in town. Yeah.
It's already zoned that way. There used to
Yeah.
be a business right on that corner, so that's why it's already included in the district.
Okay.
There was like a gas station or a market or something there.
Can we get a handout of that? It's hard to see.
Yeah,
Just
I can
like
print some
before we
off.
leave, if we could have that.
If it'll let me print over there, I will print them right now.
Well, and that looks much more like it's along, correct me if I'm wrong, like it's along the Mitchell Street corridor, and then further north, you're not
Even one
really,
block,
you're not
yeah.
really coming into the residential. You're talking probably like above the Clam, above the
Right.
RJ Grants, whatever that is now, Charming North. You know what I mean? Almost like these people are renovating apartments up there, but that's
gonna
also
bring
a
the
different
color down.
kind of rental and a different kind of renter
And those already-
than goes into a historic freestanding home, you know?
Those are
It's a little
currently
different.
Print them in color.
Yeah.
So like all of like,
So those are already in.
those are already,
Uh,
in, yeah.
And those could be, because that's a very cool thing to go and to have a neat, especially if you were able to do any balconies or anything. Not that all the buildings accommodate that, obviously, but whatever the nature of the historic building, if you have your upstairs rental, whether it's permanent or whatever, long-term rental or short-term rental, when you're able to through the open window or a balcony be open to whatever the sounds of the nightlife and whatnot around along your main strip.
So there's a public meeting, I think the 25th of this month about Airbnbs, is it?
Yeah, I don't recall the exact date, but
think
I think
it's
it's on
the-
our website.
Yeah, I think it's that following week. It is the 29th is what I have,
Okay.
or Tuesday. And then that's just another public forum. Obviously, when it comes to actually amending the zoning ordinance, there will be all of the required public hearings and published notice of that. So there are lots of opportunities to provide more input, and it's certainly a process the city is taking a lot of time to make sure it's hearing from all interested parties.
What's the timeline on this, do you guys think? Like, before
Well,
it's approved or? you know, or about?
Probably, it's part of the overall ordinance. I think we're looking towards the end of the year, start of the next year.
Pretty soon.
Yeah. And the focus has been on this, despite the fact that there's many other changes, which kind of surprised nobody's wanted to talk about any of the other changes, but,
Like what other
What?
changes?
Uh-oh.
well, we're, one of the things that we're doing, is reducing, some of the, parking standards, particularly in the downtown. In terms of making any of the projects work for downtown without reducing the parking standard. Most of the projects that people are proposing would not be able to be built. That would include Cadillac lofts. Lee Richards' project he was working on, that wouldn't be possible without a change. So, and again, we're not cutting it across the board. In some respects we are, but we also then require them to demonstrate that the parking levels that they'll provide will adequately serve their project. So we're just creating more flexibility in parking. And for the downtown, instead of going to B1, B2, B3, the entire downtown is going to be in one of two districts. It's going to be in the downtown core or the downtown district. And then the uses that you can have will, they're largely the same, but there's a little bit of difference between the core and the rest of the downtown. So the old system was based on a hierarchy of intensity and not so much looking at what businesses should be in the downtown. B1 and B2 and B3 built on each other. B1 was the least intense, and then more intense in B2, and then more intense in B3. We were moving away from that and going with more what kind of businesses would have synergy in the downtown, and how would that work. So I think from a economic standpoint, it will stand to make our downtown stronger and more vital. So things like that. You won't see a massive change, even though the names are changing. The land uses will not be changing that much, and much of our single-family development were built in kind of 3 tiers of density. We have a lot of 50-foot lot residential lots. We have a lot of 70-foot wide residential lots, and a lot of 100-foot width lots. And almost all the subdivisions fall into those categories. So we're trying to maintain the historical density levels in those districts. And so there will be a number of single-family districts that the uses will be largely the same, but the dimensions and scale will be matching what the dimension and scale are in those neighborhoods right now. So even though you'll see a massive change in names, you won't see a massive change in uses, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So this map, there's barely any of, there's like no historic.
Yeah, it doesn't even,
Currently, there's not.
I wouldn't even object to it pushing further into the
Well,
historic
like this.
district, to be honest.
But this is already is already approved, right?
No.
This is
Oh,
proposed.
this is proposed.
This is what
Well,
went to
none
the
of that
last
is
forum.
encroaching on a
We
residential
will be doing
area.
at least one, if not two
Yeah,
more
but
proposed
Airbnbs are in
maps.
residential areas.
And that's why we're
the-
here. If
Well,
you
regular
know,
B&Bs
asking
too.
So that would
I mean,
expand if like we were like, yes, today, this would expand more?
No,
Is what
we're
you're-
just input on there.
potentially.
Potentially.
That's what I was wondering.
So we're doing another one or
potentially-
two maps to present
Okay.
at our next forum in a couple of weeks. So that's why we wanted your feedback. If we go another block or two up, would you guys be okay with that, with enforcement or regulations or what those things would look in place? Obviously, you guys would have to get final approvals before it would go to city council. But just in those next proposals, if it's just a flat no, if it's a let's have further discussion, what that would look
Can I
like.
ask what's happened? Because I know of at least 4 illegal Airbnbs in our neighborhood already. Why are they not being shut down or anything at this point?
So
Let Laura
Yeah.
address. Laura, you want to address that?
Was the question, why isn't anything being done about current rentals?
Shutting down the illegal
Yeah, so the city has filed 2 lawsuits as a starting place against currently unlawfully operating short-term rentals. So 2 are in litigation, and we have sent cease and desist letters to a number of others. Resources being what they were, council did not file lawsuits against all of them at once, but certainly sometimes the letters in themselves have been effective. But we are proceeding with litigation.
Okay.
So we do have open enforcements on all of them that have received cease and desist letters, and as more have been reported to us, we have sent them on to Foster Swift to send cease and desist letters.
We have a monthly tracking report where we're tracking them monthly to make adjustments monthly on the status of all the cases. And taking in the new complaints as well.
Okay. So that's good until there's a zoning or approval. So but yeah, they
That's
should
how I
be-
know
they
at
shouldn't
least
be running
one
that
did
until we get
shut down in
approval.
the historic district because they did receive a cease and desist letter from
Okay.
Foster Swift.
Okay, do you have any more questions for us, or?
No, I think that covers it.
Thank you for your feedback. We
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for asking. All right, next item is commissioner comments. My only comment is if we could still schedule that meeting,
The blight meeting, yes.
the parking, the.
Yes. So we have not received any applications yet for that.
Oh, no, I meant the whole meeting with the police department
Yes.
about all the.
So I have.
'cause
code
it's not
enforcer
just that
confirmed
property.
a date, and then I'm just waiting on the police chief to confirm
Okay.
if he can also. So
Right.
as of right now, we're hoping for Thursday at 1:00.
Oh, this Thursday, all right.
This Thursday at 1 is our hope for you if you two can attend. But I'm waiting for Adam to
It'll
say,
be here?
yes, I can be here. Yes.
All right.
If that works for you, we can
Yeah.
try and put it somewhere else.
17th.
Okay. So I missed the last meeting, so we're hoping that the police will start ticketing and enforcing all this, right? Is that kind
Yes,
of
just
the-
to have some more discussion about current
tree lawn
processes.
Right, yes, yeah, that needs to stop.
It doesn't, do you agree it needs to stop?
Yeah,
It's
totally.
Yeah,
horrible.
Yeah.
And it's actually gotten dangerous, so I know I rant about this nonstop, but it's, even if there's a parking place on the street right next to where they're on the tree lawn, and like that, and I'm not talking about 401 East Harris now, I'm talking about the house that's on Park, right next to the alley when you pull out. And and he's had like 6 people living in that house before, and they're all just willy-nilly all over the tree line, and you cannot see oncoming traffic. So anyway, I'm not gonna belabor it. All right, so Thursday, 1:00, very appreciative.
Here? Yes, it would be here. Like I said, I'm just waiting for Adam to confirm that he can.
Okay, all right,
can meet
thank you
as
very
well.
much for that.
And I have a question for John, because I'd sent out an email some time back when they were doing budgeting stuff and whatnot, and talked to Ken Payne and Owen Roberts, and I think you were in that email, and Marcus, about the pavers in the streets, because I know pavers have been salvaged and put into other projects, and there's still some access to those. But we were talking about, and Ken said that they were hoping to do some this, that they were planning on doing some this year to remediate some more of the holes, because some of them have gotten, and I know he said going, what are we started on the far east side, if it was northeast, I don't know if it's exactly east, but whatever, on Mason Street there, this end, and we did a few test spots of replacing brick where there are either asphalt or cement plugs. And he talked about going further west. Well, actually, I'd skip a few of them that are actually intact, as bad as they look, because there are others that are like huge potholes now. You can't even drive down the street. So instead of just doing them in order, I'd go to the worst ones first. But whatever, as long as we get some done. But is there some time frame on that of when that's supposed to start? Because I don't know that they would get to all of them this year, but I know he was indicating that some would happen.
I would have to get with Ken Payne on that.
Okay.
I know I did see an email, I think, that back and forth between you and him. So there was no time frame in that email?
Yeah.
Or did he say he was going to do some more this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
So usually, or at least in the past when we did that, they had done it towards the end of the season, or the end of the summer, because then they, it's basically so they aren't spending more money. It's the cement overflow that they have to waste anyway. So if they get those, whatever it is they're doing, filling potholes or whatever they're doing with that cement on little repair stuff around town, at that time they have the whole pour mixed, So he scheduled it before for us where it was, where when they were doing their pour, he had a couple guys come and dig out those, break up those cement that were already chunked and, basically pull out some of those plugs and get them ready so that when the cement, the extra overflow, they could bring their cement truck over, and now the holes are ready. When they're ready, these holes are also sitting there ready to go for the extra cement that they pour in to make a footing beneath, and then you lay your bricks on top. So that's basically it. But it's coordinated kind of with this repair stuff, I believe, at the end of the season, or that's how he had
I
done
think
it
they
before.
patch holes in the streets right before winter hits.
Yes,
try to get
ma'am.
them in good a condition
Yeah.
as possible.
So,
Well, I'll see if he can pin down the time frame any
Yeah,
any
I would
better
appreciate
than,
it.
than this year.
Or even pick sites, if we can start picking the locations, then they know.
right. Well, they're all on Mason Street. Mason
ones are.
and Shelby. So, it's not hard to find them. If you just drive down, you'll fall in the holes.
Just one comment on the issue of the potential or probable application at 401 East Harris, and the question is to the Historic District Commission's authority to review that. I'm just going to wait for council's opinion on that, and then we can discuss it further once we see that. But just to bring you guys up to speed, there's the property that had the issue with all the tenants parking all over the tree lawn at 401 East Harris, the greenhouse. And he wants to put in permanent parking. And so there's currently a dispute between me, frankly, and the city as to whether the Historic District Commission has the authority or is required to review that before a permit is issued by the city. And my position is yes, because it affects
That's infrastructure.
Right.
Especially because that house in question is a corner lot. You have 2 front yards. That's what it's considered for fencing, for parking, for anything. So you're talking about what affects the front of the facade, that comes here.
So anyway,
Yeah.
so we're waiting for an opinion from council on whether we have I don't want to say the authority, whether we're required under law to review that before a permit is issued. And so as of now, we're just waiting for an opinion. We may not have an issue, or we may have an issue. So we'll wait and see.
And I can speak to that our office has been provided with that correspondence and information, which is very helpful. And we're reviewing it, but we're also waiting for an application. Obviously, it's sort of academic until there's an application actually submitted. So I would expect that once there's an application, that's when our formal opinion would follow.
Right. Well, I mean, it's something that does need to be sorted out, particularly if you're looking at doing Airbnbs in the area. There's going to be people who are going to be looking to expand the parking on their properties, and so it would be helpful to sort this issue out. I'm thinking.
Sure. Yep. And definitely understand and appreciate that.
And I have a question about that. When you have like a house with a yard, isn't there supposed to be so much yard? I mean, you just can't make it all cement parking, can you?
That's correct.
You cannot.
Right, and
It's like a percentage.
And quite frankly, the new ordinance will have very specified percentages for how much of the lot can be covered.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's something that's being carried forward in the new ordinance as well.
And wasn't your question at hand that they were looking at more parking, basically filling the side yard with parking?
No, I don't know
Or-
what they're doing. My point is
Oh,
that we may very well think what they're doing is fine. It's just it's a question of a change to the landscaping and the basically the relationship between the historic structure and its surrounding area, the historic streetscape, which is within the. I mean, that's what we deal with. That's why we deal with fences. That's why we address carports. It's not just structures. If you look at the Secretary of Interior standards, it's more than that. And the particular concern is the streetscape, what you can see from the street when you're walking down the sidewalk, when you're driving down the street. It's right there. It's on a corner lot, and it affects the historic streetscape. So I think that's something that's within our purview, and we just need to look at it to make sure that to balance the factors that we're required to balance when we're looking at making an alteration to an historic site. And it may be fine, and obviously nothing is going to stay the way that it was in the early 1900s when it was built, but there are considerations that have to be worked through to ensure it's the best scenario also for the historic district, not just the property owner. Okay. That's it.
I have another. I've been in the historic district. It'll be almost 30 years. And I've seen it just seems like, and I know we've been like beating an old dead horse about, but it just seems like it seems worse now. Was there ever a dedicated enforcement officer, like with the sidewalks? I swear somebody went around with paint.
Yeah, they did.
And I don't see that anymore.
We did have at one point within the police department a full-time enforcement officer.
They do
In fact,
sidewalks?
I don't know if
I don't think the police
I don't
care
know
about
if she
the
was actually an
sidewalks.
officer, but she was in the police department. But she spent full time doing code enforcement, and when that person retired, then I think the time spent on that was backed off a little bit.
Okay.
Well, it's even trees that aren't being trimmed and to the
Yeah.
point of being dangerous. I mean, I've called and told, Mike Coy told me who to call at the city about branches that look like they could kill somebody, frankly, hanging from a tree. And I call and say, you need to take care of this. Nobody does it. Eventually it falls. Hopefully, nobody's under it. This particular branch fell. Nobody was under it. But that sort of thing is just completely ignored in the historic district.
I think we also now have you can maybe speak to this, don't we have a online complaint system?
Yes, we do have a new reporting system so that people can actually take a picture of the branch, mark it right where it's at, and then you can get updates on what they've done and who it's been assigned to and those things.
I think you mentioned that the last time.
Yeah. I do know some of them, there was one over on Oak Street that people have been complaining about, but it was actually close to a power line. And so we couldn't take it down. So it did take longer because consumers had to come and do that, and they just don't work on our time frame.
Why is there no regular tree trimming here? This is the first city I've ever lived in my life that does not have regular tree trimming.
I think we do it on city parks and properties there, but not on the tree lawns. We do replace them and plant them for free, but as
Are
for
they the
maintenance
owner's
of them-
responsibility then?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so the
to
owners.
mow and to take care of are the owner's responsibility.
On the
But
tree
we
lawn?
will come in
Wow.
and remove them for free if people report that they are dead, and we will also replace them.
Well,
There's
now
a
that we
spring
know
and
that,
fall
we'll have our
planting.
trees trimmed.
I will say, if a neighbor comes in and wants you to remove his neighbor's tree, we don't always necessarily do that. We've had a few neighbor disputes because they didn't like the image of their neighbor's tree, but the neighbor whose tree lawn it was liked the image of that tree. So we've gotten in a few disputes like that of
So you're only talking about the tree line then?
the tree lawn.
Tree lawn.
Right, I'm
Yes.
talking about the trees that are on the city property.
Yeah. I just called the city parks back when Al Dumond was on it, and they'd be out within a week and take them down for me for free.
Really?
Yeah.
He must like you better than us.
I just also want to say, with our historic district, I think, in the downtown, I think it's looking, nicer overall. I know there are some buildings that aren't so nice, but I think you have to have a strong residential district. Like all these other cities around us. Even Manistee, which is much like Cadillac, Traverse City is, above and beyond. As far as the economics. But their downtown districts are strong. And you don't see, and again, I don't want to keep mentioning about the parking, the lawns, the garbage cans, the sidewalks and the abandoned cars. But I think, with the enforcement, I think it should be done a little, better. And is there any way you can improve that? Because I think it actually devalues the properties.
I wouldn't disagree with that. That's a monetary expenditure decision, and I think that probably basically would have to come from council. Certainly, you could undertake that at any level you would want to, very slight or very intensive. But I think it's just people need to communicate to, the council and just let them know your feelings about,
Well, to me, it just seems obvious. I mean, I've had friends even saying like, God, the house is like awful. Or, I just, it's kind of obvious. I mean, you just drive around. Every block has that house. Some have two of those houses.
And while that's on the negative side, the city invested, say, $5 million into Cadillac Commons. That's produced $35 million in private investment within a mile of the downtown. So,
But we don't care about Cadillac Commons. We care about the historic district.
well, I'm
that's-
talking about the entire downtown and immediate surrounding area.
Yeah,
Right?
no,
And
but we're
it feeds off each other. I agree with you
Yeah,
on that.
but the converse is true, is that we feed into that too. And so what we're looking at is, I agree, I think downtown, other than the Pizza Plus building, I think you guys are doing a good job. I like how it's shaping up. I like Cadillac Commons, but I'm looking at our neighborhoods and they're lagging in terms of the attention from the city.
And we hear and we understand their valid concerns. And code enforcement isn't under our department. So, we are passing along your concerns. We are, doing the best that we can to help you guys report them in the best way possible. So, we're going to have this meeting, and I'm hoping that it is a productive meeting, that we can do those things as well. Certain things are under John and I's direct control in our department, and certain things are not.
So how do we go about approaching the city council or whoever we need to approach about bringing back the person who was responsible, not necessarily that person, but the
But a
position
full-time position.
Most
that,
direct way, I guess, would be to address council through the city manager.
okay.
Address the letter to council in care of the
Right.
city manager, and of course Marcus could make sure that communication gets received.
You can always
Right.
send letters to the clerk as well for the next council meetings.
I mean, I think it'd be beneficial for the city,
It would. Property values would go up.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
John, if maybe I could, I'm not sure if you could follow up on with, when you talk with Ken, if there's a date or whether he's communicating with me or you are, or whomever, to, because the museum's interested in that too, and, keeping all the historic interested people apprised of where the streets are going, the brick streets
I'll see
specifically.
how far he can
Yeah.
pin that down as to a date. It might be a month more than a day.
Right,
but
yeah,
that
yeah.
might at least be helpful.
Yeah, exactly. But just so we know that there's a target on the map somewhere, you know what I
Right.
mean?
I get
So
it.
to get some more work done on that. Okay, I appreciate it.
Any other comments? Public comments? I see no public. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second. We're done. All right. Thank you very much.
Everybody. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Laura.
Good night.
Have a great
Yep,
night.
take care.